Hello, everybody. I'm Zeus from CK Research. It's week 45 of Real Time Recorded. I'm here with remote Dave, who I believe is in Europe right now, aren't you, Dave?
Yes, I am traveling the continent, as they say.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. So at least you're traveling again. So what happened this week, Dave? I think we had a pretty big announcement, right? Mitel RingCentral cut a deal. I think that completes the world domination tour for RingCentral as far as the traditional vendors go. I guess there's also always Cisco and Microsoft, but I doubt you're gonna see Cisco do WebEx Cloud Office using RingCentral. So, what do you think of the deal?
It was a surprise, I have to say. You know, Mitel's been working hard at building out their UCaaS strategy with going back to the ShoreTel acquisition. They were making progress on their new launch of what they call Mitel One. So I think they were. I think I was. I know I was surprised that they've decided to do this, but I could see the value for both sides. I think there's like every deal, there's winners and losers, but clearly Mitel and RingCentral are in the winners department. They for RingCentral, they're getting their first arrangement like this that is not co-branded.
Yeah.
So they got the non-co-branded offer. It's going to be pure RCO or RingCentral Office. There's no competition from Mitel because Avaya's got Spaces and Alcatel-Lucent has Rainbow and Atos. They sell everything from Google to Microsoft or whatever. So you've got no competition really from Mitel, which is probably really nice for RingCentral. It's going to be a really fast ramp because of that, so I think that's great for RingCentral. I think Mitel's a winner. They got to monetize their base much quicker than they probably could have any other way. I actually, let me throw this at you, Zeus. I think I can see Mitel getting back into the IP phone business for all of UCaaS. I mean, they did that earlier with the Astra acquisition. And then I think a lot of UCaaS companies had trouble putting Mitel phones into their accounts. But now that Mitel's not in UCaaS and they do make great hardware, I think there could be a good play there for phones. What do you think on that one?
Yeah, I actually think that was one of the interesting aspects of the deal where it's not like with ACO, Avaya's running a custom version of Ring to work with the Avaya phones, but it only works with that version of Ring Cloud Office, the Avaya version of it. With Mitel, they're actually adapting their phones to work with RingCentral, so they can work across the RingCentral base. And right now, I think Ring primarily sells Yealink and Poly, and I actually think the Mitel phones are better than both of them. I think they've always made great phones, and so that opens the door, for Mitel to address a broader audience. And it's a bit of a strange deal in that you could look at it as Mitel giving up their base. But I think, first of all, you're right. They've been working on their own cloud offering for a while, but the gap between what the leaders can do and what Mitel could do was getting bigger. And I think Mitel was looking at having to put a significant amount of money into that product and decided to cut bait. And because I think what was happening to Mitel is they had one foot in the old world and one foot in the new world, and it's hard to play both sides of it. And for all the talk of cloud, Dave, the majority of the install base is still on-prem.
That's what a lot of people are missing. I'm really glad you brought that up. It's a huge. I haven't verified the number, but I've heard from other people that it's a $50 billion market in premises based, and there's still a tremendous amount of premises based opportunity, and there's less and less innovation happening in that space. So it's actually a pretty nice opportunity for Mitel to refocus there.
The analogy I use, it's a little bit like what Dell has done, where they rolled up the traditional compute market, right? And they sell a ton of servers, they sell a ton of storage in a world that's rapidly going cloud, but it's not all cloud, right? And so somebody still has to do innovation on the traditional side. And when I talk to Mitel management about this, that's what they intend to do. And so they will monetize the traditional markets as best they can. I think and Ring was really excited about CloudLink because it allows them to bridge into the traditional on-prem stuff, bring Ring in, but not be disruptive to the customer. And so this slows down the rate of churn. Right. It slows down the rate of churn for Mitel, allows them to innovate and keep customers on those products longer. So to me,
even better than CloudLink, I think Mitel's got that. I forget the name of it. The emergency notification service. They've done it with. They've done a number of examples of this. It could be anywhere from a school shooting to to a heart attack or something like that, where they put out a text message to everybody and update the phones with messaging. I think that's going to fit into RingCentral's portfolio really nicely in their healthcare vertical. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity there with the Mitel assets and for both companies to come out really well on this. Also, Searchlight, which is the main owner of Mitel, invested in RingCentral, and I think this is really interesting. Because Avaya invested when RingCentral and Avaya did their partnership. RingCentral kind of invested in Avaya and got a board seat, et cetera, like that. But and there's merit to that, and I understand why that worked that way. But Searchlight's like, well, wait a minute, RingCentral is going to go up in value. We should buy some of their stock, and so they put another $200 million into RingCentral stock, and I thought that was a really interesting a double play going on here. They got the $650 million in one pocket, and then they're spending $200 million in another pocket and buying stock. I thought that was very, very clever.
Yeah, well, it certainly shows that Searchlight's bought into Ring, so and good for Ring. So I do think it winds up becoming a win-win. And the third leg of the win stool, I think, is the Mitel customers, because I think without that, they were going to be forced to make a tough decision. Do I stay with Mitel, or do I do a complete rip and replace and go to something like RingCentral? Now they can do both. Right?
Yeah, it's another day for RingCentral, and just one more notch on the belt. But for Mitel, it's a pretty big change. I mean, they'll be changing direction and in many ways doubling down on being a master agent. There's going to be some dust to settle there, and it'll be interesting to watch how this plays out. But I do think there's a pretty good opportunity, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and the other piece of the news that sort of flew under the radar was Tarun Lumba is now CEO, taking over from Mary, right? Who takes the board seat. So.
Yeah, that was one of Mary's first hires. They worked together at Polycom, and then when she came over to Mitel, she brought him over, and that's been a good relationship. And so, congratulations to Tarun. Yeah,
and given the new focus for Mitel, I think having a product person run that company actually is the right person now. So he's a good guy. In fact, I talked to one of the resellers about him, and he said Tarun's never afraid to say the right thing. And so, that's not always the case in companies, Dave. And but with Tarun, that seems to be true. So.
Excellent. Well, let's get on to another story here. This week we got some financial results, a lot of financial results actually, but I kind of wanted to focus in on NICE in particular. They made some interesting announcements in their update. I tell you, being a CCaaS vendor must be pretty darn easy. Zeus. They're all just growing like crazy, right? It's like Old Faithful. Every quarter, it's like exceeding expectations. But NICE in particular, they reported that it was their first $500 million quarter. That's something interesting to see in the CCaaS space. They reported 20% total revenue growth and 29% growth in the cloud, and so I think that's not too far off from what we're seeing from other CCaaS companies. They mentioned that their CX1 new bookings actually grew 100% year over year, and that's the space, right? They said that they now have 725,000 agents in 100 countries on CX1. It's just phenomenal how much CCaaS is turning into a mainstream conversation.
Yeah, and you're right. It is good times. Let the good times roll for the CCaaS vendors. And frankly, I think people like Barry Warnstein, who's the CFO of Five9, have some of the easiest CFO jobs in the industry because they have 95% of the visibility baked going into the quarter. So trying to estimate what the next quarter is looking like is going to be pretty easy. But what's going to be interesting to me, Dave, and I asked Rowan Falk, the CEO of Five9, this question on the analyst call they did. is where, because I do think UCaaS, and you and I have talked about this for a while, UCaaS is ASPs are on the decline, or at least the vendors have to put a significant amount of innovation in it to hold the line on price. Where I think CCaaS, we're going to see with the infusion of AI a pretty dramatic uptick in ASPs. And Rowan actually mentioned they're getting like $400 per seat for their virtual agent. When I had talked to John Chambers about this after he invested in Unifor, he says he thinks you could see virtual agents sold at $1,000 a seat or more. Like if they're selling them for $400 a seat per month, that's $5,000 a year. What's a fully loaded agent cost you? 60 grand, 70 grand, 100 grand. I mean, you could charge easily $1,000 a seat, and you'd still make money off it. So I think you're right from a CCaaS perspective. There's so much opportunity there now with the increase in ASPs, but also the expansion of seats to other people like salespeople. I talked to one company that's giving CCaaS seats to their field service people. Right, so it's a pretty remarkable run that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's an area
I'm not sure I've seen, since the dawn of the internet, right, when Cisco kind of took off. I'm not sure I've seen just a market with a rising tide that's this fast in a long time.
That's a really interesting area for Five9 in particular with all their automation technology. But Five9, they also had a great quarter. I can't remember their numbers offhand, but their stock went up like 14% the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that was really important because I actually expected their stock to go up after the Zoom deal fell apart, because I thought the Zoom was kind of holding down the value of the Five9 share, because it was pegged to a certain amount of Zoom shares. So I thought it would go right up after the deal fell apart, but it didn't. And I think people feared that Five9 lost their momentum, and then they come out with their quarter results, and it showed they didn't lose their momentum. The stock goes crazy. This is exactly what Five9 needed, right? They're here. They're back. They're growing. They're strong growth. And I saw some of the financial analysts have already raised their price targets on Five9. So I think they're going to do really well too. But you talked about automation. I want to talk a little bit about digital, because that's the one thing that the NICE folks really emphasized. They said that their digital revenues grew 78% because during the pandemic, everyone's been using digital communications much more. I'm in Europe right now, and I'm having trouble because I don't have WhatsApp, and I can't get things done. Everybody I'm talking to says WhatsApp me, and I can't do it. And so WhatsApp is like the norm over here, much more so than the U.S., but it's pretty prevalent in the U.S. as well. But NICE said that they're seeing significant cross-sell in digital deals and CCaaS deals, and that for the first time their digital-only deals grew significantly, like sevenfold. So I think digital communications is really taking off, which is another reason to be in the CCaaS business right now.
Yeah. I have WhatsApp specifically for when I go to Europe, or I was just at GITEX in Dubai. Everybody there communicates over WhatsApp. It'd be nice if we had one standard for this, though. But if you're over there and you ask people to like SMS it, they don't. They just use WhatsApp. It's sort of natural.
I'm running into it, and it's very frustrating. I don't want to install WhatsApp because you have to give it your full access to your contacts. I don't want to deal with that whole thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to get another phone and whatever. I'm gonna have to figure this out. It's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. Well, I think that wraps up this episode of Real Time Recorded, and thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with yet another week of Real Time Recorded.